Alright guys, how's it going? Another tier list coming at you. It's been a while. Last one I did I think was the knife tier list. So if you are interested in checking that out, then by all means, have a quick look at that and then come back here. As ever, really curious on your opinions. If you have any of the tier lists that you'd like me to do after watching this, by all means let me know and I'll try and get round to it. And of course, let me know in order of best to worst what your tier list or what your favorite to least favorite maps would be in the current pool. Now, there are a couple of added maps here as well. We have Cobblestone and we also have Cache. Neither of these are in the active map pool as I make this video. Is the 8th of March 2020. Obviously, depending on when you watch this video, maybe that would have changed. But they have been storied historical maps within the context of Counter-Strike, and so I'm going to keep them in this map pool tier list. I'm not sure why there's two Infernos. Maybe that's old Inferno and new one. I'll just lump them together, to be honest, because I'm going to be talking generally about the maps, but also getting into specifics as well. Most of these, though, the rest of them are based off their current iteration, not previous iterations. I think for some of these maps, their previous iterations were better than their current iteration, which we will discuss in a moment. But I'm basing these off their current iteration. That's very, very important. So let's start with Cache from left to right. Not in the current map pool, but I think it will be the next one to come in. Which map goes out for it? Not really sure at this point. I would have thought Mirage. That's had some changes, which I will get back to momentarily. Very recently, it had a couple of changes brought in. That would suggest maybe it won't get moved out. Vertigo, I doubt it's going to get moved out with all of the love and all of the focus that Valve have put on it. I don't know if they've just realized it's a hopeless cause from their perspective or what. But Cache, I really like Cache. I always have. I was disappointed when it was took out in the first place. I didn't think it needed to be. I understand if they wanted to spruce it up, make it look a little bit prettier and change a couple of things. I'm glad with the remake that they did. I think it doesn't reinvent the wheel, as Cache was already a very good map, but it does change a few things to just add a little bit of spice, another couple of layers to the map overall. And obviously the change to the general theme of the map and the graphics and everything is a nice touch. However, there are issues with this change. The FPS drops are noticeable, the performance issues are noticeable. And right now, as I make this video, there's also problems within Counter-Strike. There's stuttering, there's lag spikes. I'm sure you've encountered them. I certainly have. And I have a solid PC. So when I'm playing Cache and the current CSGO patch, I end up getting 50 to 100 FPS less than I do on most of the other maps. And that is an issue. That is a problem. And that definitely does stop it from being absolute top tier. But I am going to put Cache as an A tier map. I think Cache is just a map that has always been solid. It's always been a good middle ground map for most teams. I feel like most teams have been able to play it in some way, shape, or form. It does remind me, in a sense, to Dust 2, which may seem like a strange comparison to make because there are definitely differences. But the idea of middle, being able to fork off into other sides of the map. So if you think of Dust and you think of Cache, you have middle. On Cache, you can go left towards vents and drop down to B. That's kind of your lower tunnels on Dust. You can go through middle, around the back of both sites, kind of like Dust 2, or around the side of both sites. And then if you go to the right-hand side of middle, you have Catwalk, or in this case, you can go up Highway. So there are definitely similarities between Cache and Dust 2, and I think that layered approach does allow many people and many teams to be able to quickly go back and forth when they're learning these maps and to learn both simultaneously. But for me, Cache is a very, very good map. You're allowed to play aggressively on the CT side. You're not oppressed too much. You're not punished too much for it. If you want to try and peek into A main, whether it's early or late, you can pop flash yourself in. You can go through Squeaky. You can go up for a counter boost, play vents, go through Garage. You can even try and take some aggression through B side on CT. And that's really important for me. We used to have issues with, and I'll get back to this when we talk about Nuke in particular and Cobblestone, where CTs couldn't really do anything. They had to sit there and wait and just hope for the best and cross their fingers and hope that their crossfires and hope that they could deal with the utility as well as possible. And the Ts could just kind of play at their pace. They could dictate the pace of the rounds. With a lot of these changes to the iterations of the maps, now on the CT side, you can dictate the pace of the action. And that makes it really interesting to watch, play, observe, and everything else, you know? So Cache, not quite S tier. It doesn't have that X factor that makes me think, holy shit, this is like the best map in the current iteration of Counter-Strike. But it's definitely up there. It's a map I really, really enjoy. Cobblestone. So I did just mention before about how some maps feel really brutal on the CT side, and you basically have to sit there and just wait. And it was more so the previous iterations of Cobblestone than the current one, where especially if you were a B player, and you lost drop zone control, you're just basically screwed. Like, you were utterly screwed. You couldn't really take too many aggressive fights. For the T's, if you're pushing up middle or long, you would just run into a stack if they're playing anti-eco. It felt very, very brutal to be on a CT side, especially if you got behind. The current iteration fixed some of those issues. You're able to now self-boost through the boxes on drop, but I still just don't see this current iteration being good. I actually prefer the old version of Cobblestone to the new one. This new one is absolutely dog shit. It's not great, and I really miss Cobblestone. I was actually one of the people that was most sad when it got took out the pool in the first place. I didn't think it was as bad as people made out, and I just think with every iteration it's got worse and worse. I would agree now that if you compare it to some of the other maps and their changes, it has fallen so far behind in my opinion. And even though it's been out of the active pool for longer than Cache, I think Cache is coming back much sooner than Cobble. I would be amazed if Cobblestone comes back into the active pool before Cache does. But I guess we'll watch this space. Valve have done crazier things. So yeah, Cobble, sorry, you're in dog shit. I hope you get some changes. I hope that it become a map that I can enjoy again. But right now, it ain't happening. Dust 2. This is one of the centerpieces of the franchise of Counter-Strike. This is synonymous with CS. You think of Counter-Strike, you're thinking of Dust 2. Well, I'm not necessarily, because as I'm about to explain, I'm not a huge fan of the map. But I think most people think of Dust 2. It's probably one of the most played maps. If you're looking at like deathmatch, if you're looking at just general casual play, Dust 2 is where everyone seems to go. Everyone knows the map. It's a very simplistic map, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think that's one of the things that makes Counter-Strike such a fantastic esport and a fantastic game to play. It's beautiful in its simplicity. There isn't anything too egregious or intricate in Counter-Strike. The layers are brought in through skill and tactical awareness and how you implement those tactics. If you look at a game like Rainbow Six Siege, the maps are insanely intricate. The bomb sites change positions. You can't even be sure the bomb site's going to be in the same spot, and so therefore it changes the dynamic of how the round plays out. Now, I'm not bashing on Rainbow Six. I think Siege is a fantastic game, but you can see the vast differences, and this is why you shouldn't just label everything as, oh, it's an FPS, they're the same. Absolutely not. Siege and CS are nothing alike, other than being FPSs, and even in that context, they're not really alike at all. But you look at the sort of map design of Siege and CS, and one of the to-do lists, on the tick lists, is be fairly straightforward and not too convoluted. Because of the way it plays, if you have a map that has loads of different entry and exit points, it's going to be a nightmare to aggress. You're going to get shot in the back all the time. Crossfires are going to be an absolute nightmare. This is something I think Canals struggled with when it first came out, is there were so many different ways to get into sites and wrap around the enemy. It just didn't really feel rewarding on either side. It felt like it came down to RNG, randomness of, is the timing going to screw me over here, that I look away from an angle to cover one of the other 4 places I have to watch out for just as someone pushes in. And they have fixed that to a degree, but not too much. Very convoluted explanation there. I'm just trying to say simplicity is great for Counter-Strike. It's one of the reasons I love this esport so much and love this game so much and have for many, many years over different iterations through the franchise. With all that being said, Dust 2 is played out hard. I am sick and tired of watching, casting, observing, or playing this map. It's not a bad map, though. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's dog shit, because it absolutely is not dog shit. It allows the CTs to play aggressively. It does. Catwalk control, long control, if both teams are aggressive, can be very, very exciting to watch. It can be a really cool game of cat and mouse, and it's a map that really does unlock a lot of AWPers and allow AWPers to dictate the pace of how the map goes. And I think it has a place within the map pool of CS. Something else that is important to mention here is there aren't many other maps in the pool right now that are like Dust 2. These vast open areas through middle, through long, even from the backside of B looking into tunnels. These are all aspects where the AWPs, SGs, AUGs, scouts can really take shape. And that's not necessarily the case on other maps. If you remove Dust 2 from the current pool, you would be left in a less target-rich environment for AWPing. And that could actually have a little bit of a knock-on effect with the rest of the pool. So there is definitely a place for Dust 2. I wish that Valve, when they removed it from the active pool, changed it more. I wish they didn't just reskin the map. For me, that was really disappointing. I was hoping to see a few things. They didn't have to drastically change it. All the best changes are small things here and there, but they do have a noticeable impact. Think of Inferno, Banana, for example. Think of Inferno, the skyboxes, for example. And there's a bunch of other little, small, intricate details that got changed, and I think it made Inferno far better than it used to be. And I used to love Inferno before anyway, so a bit of a spoiler. I may as well just put it here now, and I'll discuss it in a second. Inferno is S tier. But Dust 2, I'm going to put as C. I'm putting Dust 2 right down the middle. I think it is border plate, run-of-the-mill, fairly mediocre right now because of how much it's been played out. I think it's in desperate need of a... I was going to say a redo, but Valve have fairly recently and barely changed anything. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I'm hoping they do. I'm not holding my breath, though, but I think it's a C tier map right now. Mirage. I feel very similarly about Mirage as I do Dust 2, but I actually think Mirage is not as well a constructed map as Dust 2. I feel like Mirage is a little bit more claustrophobic for the CT side. Yes, you can take aggression, but I feel like it's a little bit more punishing on Mirage. And this is typically why you only see aggression take shape when it's ecos and force buys. When the economy is really bad, you don't really see rifle rounds take too much aggression. The only exception might be that sometimes you'll see like a CT side with rifles push up middle and try and take the fight to the T's if they keep exploiting mid. But then you run into the issue of underpass being a problem and flashes, and it can get messy really fast. I just think Mirage is a map that's in dire need of being taken out the pool and being reworked and touched up a little bit. For me, it's a D tier map. I wouldn't put it in dog shit. I wouldn't do it that disservice. I still think it's fine. And I have to mention that this is only contextually within the confines of the current pool. I think if you take any of these maps, Cobblestone included, and you put them into other games of a similar ilk to CS, they're phenomenal maps. But I think in the context of the map pool, this is how I'd rate them. The Mirage would be D tier. I do hope it gets a bit of a rework sooner rather than later. Let's talk about Inferno. I did put it in the S tier, but let's explain some of the reasons why. I just think Inferno is the quintessential clutch third map decider map. Every time Inferno is a third map decider, I'm loving it because it is an incredibly intense map. There is something in there for everybody. If you want to be a more strategical tactician team, absolutely can. You can throw in fakes from the T side. If you want to just basically stand tall and exchange blows, you can go aggressive, you can rush B, you can rush up middle, you can try and take apps control early on. And for the CTs, it's the exact same thing. You can take banana control. This is something that more and more teams are doing now. Smoking down banana and taking it for themselves and starving across the Ts. So the Ts have a decision to make. Do you want to try and take banana control yourself and come head to head with the oncoming CTs? Or do you want to give that up and play for the longer sort of round? CTs can also go through middle. This is something we see often happen, especially in pistol rounds and force buys, where you flash yourself into mid and you just charge straight down and get in the face of the Ts. Inferno is just a phenomenal map. The only downside is for T-side AWPing, it can be really rough. But then there's a decision to make. Again, it kind of adds to the strategical element of the map from the IGL's perspective or the AWPer's perspective. Do you actually want to keep the AWP? It is a map where it's not unheard of for the AWPer to just drop the AWP entirely and take an SG or an AK or something else and basically run and gun style and to be more fluid and more mobile as a team rather than putting yourself into a bit of an awkward spot, because the way the map is designed, it is harder to get picks if no one is peeking middle. I think it's more of a situational pick to AWP on T side than it is on other maps like T side Dust 2, you absolutely need to take it. T side Cash, absolutely need to take it, and pretty much everything else other than maybe Vertigo. But when you come through to Inferno, it's more of a decision that you have to make. I think it's only been strengthened and bolstered up with the changes. Its current iteration is the best it's ever been, in my opinion, but I also think old school Inferno was fantastic as well. Absolutely deserves to be at the top of the pile. Nuke. This is a map that's gone through a lot of changes, and I think it's so much better for it. If you look at old school Nuke, it was so heavily CT-sided that it would not be unheard of. It would not be out of question to see a CT side pick up 12, 13 rounds, depending. So if you were the Ts and you lost the pistol, you already knew you were basically screwed, unless the CTs are having an absolute nightmare. It was very, very CT-sided. Now, they did make a few changes, if you guys remember. And I've got all of my impressions on YouTube. I always make videos when maps get changed and altered. to kind of have a discussion with you guys about what I think about them. And they changed Nuke, and if you remember, they had that outside catwalk that went all the way around, and then suddenly it started to allow the T's to actually push into heaven quite easily, and it got a bit too T-sided. Then they took that away, they stripped it away, but they kept some of the other changes. And it's just very intriguing to see the evolution of Nuke as a map. I think it's in a pretty even place right now, actually, in terms of how sided it is. Probably does still favor the CTs to a degree, but nowhere near as much as it used to. There's a lot more options available for the Ts. It's nowhere near as constrictive as it used to be, and as brutal as it used to be for the T side. And I think Nuke is in a really good position right now. Is it at the top tier of CS, though? No, I don't think it is. I think there's still some issues with sound on that map. It can still be a bit of a clusterfuck when you're watching it from a spectating viewpoint, and I'm taking all these things into account. And it's not really a map where you can play as aggressively, I would say, on the CT side. I feel like it's still a map that you're pretty reactive and not proactive with. You can take the fight to the Ts, don't get me wrong, but I feel like on a map like Nuke, it's far more punishing if you get caught trying to peek out. Like, I'm going to talk about Overpass in a moment after Nuke. This is something that Overpass does exceptionally well that I think Nuke, just because of the layout and the design of the map, can't quite do so. But this is also one of the beautiful things about the CSGO map pool, right? That some of the negatives that I'm talking about of the maps offer. So you can pick and choose between the maps depending on your style and depending on your team's style and how they play. That's why CS is such a fucking great game. One of the many reasons why. But for Nuke, I'm putting it B. I think it's above average. I think it's a solid map, but it's not getting towards the upper tiers, the upper echelons of the CSGO map pool. Overpass. I'm going to save you any further discussion about Overpass. It's absolutely S tier. I think it's the best map, spoilers for Train and Vertigo. I think it's the best map in the current pool. It is a fantastic map. I've loved it since day one. It too has gone through changes, and if you remember, this is one of the first times that Valve actually brought a new map into the pool in CSGO. In fact, it may have been the very first time, if memory serves me correctly. It's been a while. Had a lot of issues. In particular, Long was a bit of a mess. It was a bit of a disaster. You used to have like this partition wall down there. They got rid of that. They fixed it. And they made it just so good. I love the verticality on this map. It's one of the maps that really embraces that through Connector and also from Heaven. It changes slightly without drastically changing the meta of how CS operates. CT side, you can absolutely play aggressively. You can go long through middle for an early pick. You often get AWPers facing each other via fountain and balloons. You can go down into Connector, which is such an important part of this map. If you control Connector, it's like the equivalent of Jiu-Jitsu or something. You know, you control the hips, you control the body type thing. And that's how Connector feels to me. If you control Connector, you kind of control the head. You control where the opposition is moving. Especially if you're on the CT side, and this is why a lot of teams will try and take Connector control every now and again. They may not necessarily dwell on it too much because it does leave you overextended and overexposed. But at the same time, if you do get Connector control now and again, it can absolutely win you rounds and give you vital information on the map. I love that you can also play strategical on Overpass. You can throw fakes in. There's plenty of boost positions, which really adds a different element to the game as well. That's positions you thought you were comfortable in, actually not. Every now and again, you'll just see a new boost that you haven't seen before a very few times, and you're just like, holy shit, there are still things to learn about this map that I didn't know about. Even somebody that puts as much time into the game as I do and watches as much professional CS as I do. And Overpass is just phenomenal. It's actually, I'm going to go a step further. It's my favorite map in any game. Overpass is absolutely top tier. Train. Train's an interesting one for me because I hate playing it solo. I think it's a horrific map to play solo. And that's not because of the map itself. It's just because it's a very tactically heavy map, I would say. All the entry points from the CTs are close, claustrophobic positions where you just get sprayed down unless you're on the same page. It's easy to hold from the CTs if you're against a fairly inexperienced T side and they're just pushing out with no smokes, no real cohesion. It's shooting fish in a barrel, right? Main, Ivy, Pop Dog, Ramp, and the box halls entrance on Catwalk, they're all probably 2 or 3 people wide at most. And so it's not that hard to spray through there and to dish the damage, or if you've got an AWP or 2 on the map, it's pretty easy to pick players off. But when you start to get into the territory of full stack compositions and you get to the pro level of terrain, this is really where this map shines. When you get to the top level, to watch, to play, to observe, to cast, this is where terrain really does show just how good this map really is. It's a very well designed map. It allows a different play style. It kind of is more reminiscent of Dust 2 in that respect, where AWPers are more prevalent on a map like Train. But because the outside in particular, and actually the inner bomb site too, there is the opportunity to just set up a wall of smokes. Sure, AWPs have their place on this map, but you can counter them. There is counterplay here. But on the other side, this is another reason why CS is so great and why the economy sometimes will alter how good a map is. If you don't have the finances to afford those smokes, and this map is incredibly punishing to the T's, and I love that there are those elements to it. It's not just simplistic black and white. There is grey area with Train. Train, for me, is actually an A-tier map. I'd put it below Cache, but I think it certainly does warrant being an A-tier map. It's very, very solid when you get to the top levels, and if you're in a team, for example, and you learn the smokes, you learn the set plays, this map goes from being meh, should probably ban it, to like, yeah, we should probably try and aim for this map, actually. It's really, really solid map. And I think it runs under a lot of people's radar. I think a lot of people would have this as a B or C tier map, but I think it's actually deserving of more than that. And finally, we're going to leave it with the juicy, the never any drama about Vertigo, right? We're all on the same page about this. It's definitely not a divisive map, definitely not. This is the kind of map that's either going to get near the top of people's lists or it's going to go dog shit. Now, I don't mind Vertigo, guys. I really don't. I don't think it's a great competitive map, don't get me wrong. I don't think it's great for the competitive side of CS. But I like what Valve was trying to do with Vertigo. I like they tried to switch it up. They tried to keep it fresh. They didn't just release another map, samey sort of map that plays into the strengths of like Overpass and Inferno and Cache and the rest of them. It tried to do something different, and I can respect that. Has it entirely worked out? No, it hasn't. And a lot of people have issues with this map, and understandably. If I go more caster mode here, and I think from a casting perspective, it is hard to build narrative on Vertigo because it's a bit of a mess of a map. There's a lot of carnage, which also is entertaining to watch at times. It can be really fun to watch. But when you're trying to build a narrative, you're trying to build storylines, it is a difficult map to watch, Vertigo. It's not as simplistic as some of the other maps because of the dual layered approach, like Nuke, for example. Once you get used to Nuke, it's fine. But at first, you're like, Jesus Christ, I'm confused. The sound is kind of skewed, and it's the same on Vertigo. But to watch, it can be a bit of a nightmare. It can just feel like you don't really know what's going on. I know from speaking to observers that it's an absolute nightmare to observe as well for that reason. To play, it's pretty fun. You get the opportunity, especially as I'm pretty aggressive player myself, it gives me the opportunity to just go crazy on T side and just do audacious, stupid plays that on Vertigo can work. They absolutely can. There's an element of frustration, though, on the CT side as well, but you can take aggression. It's had a lot of changes. I think because of those changes, it's unlikely it's going to go out of the pool anytime soon. So sorry for those of you that think it will, or want it to at least. I'm not putting it near the bottom of the tier list, though, because I can respect Vertigo and what Valve were trying to do with it. Do I think it's towards the S or A tier? No, definitely not. I think Vertigo, for me, is right down the middle. It's polarizing for most people. It's Marmite, you love, you hate it. But for me, it's okay. It's nothing special. It's all right. I would rank it just below Dust 2 because I want to see Dust 2 get changed. I've already been over that. And that's pretty much how my maps come down. And if you see here, we kind of got a bit of an F. So F for Dust 2 not getting a rework, I guess. And F for potentially Mirage going out next. Although I don't know if that's going to be the case with some of the changes they made. Either way though, guys, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video. If you have your own opinions, your own thoughts, your own tier list, do comment below and let me know either what you want me to make next in terms of a video or your opinions on which you'd rate highest to lowest in the map pool. Really curious to see what you guys put down there. But until next video, guys, take care of yourselves and peace.